our final panel of the festival.
Yeah, save the best for last.
The best for last, the Chisme for last. This is Comics Chisme Hour with Comadres y Comics and DocTeeRoh. I am DocTeeRoh, Dr. Theresa Rojas. I am a professor of English and the first professor of ethnic studies here at Modesto Junior College. And I am going to move over so that you can tell us who are Comadres y Comics, but then I want to get to know you a little more individually, because that's where the good Chisme comes from, right? So we could start with a quick overview of Comadres y Comics. Tell us who you are.
Well, my name is Sara Bazan, and I am 46 years old, I think. I'm pretty sure. I love comic books, and I'm just so happy that I met these ladies who also love comic books, and we're able to bring that to a bigger audience. I couldn't have asked for a better set of co-hosts. I'm just so fortunate that we have been doing this for 6 years. So I'm super excited, and thank you guys for being here.
I'm Jennifer Lopez, and now you see I'm following in your, I'm gonna be 28 this year, and I mean, I've liked comics like since middle school. I haven't always been reading comics, but I was definitely a fan, and I first worked for Kristen at the comic book store, Heidi Ho Comics. And then Kristen met Sarah at a convention? Yeah, at a convention. And then Sarah and Kristen like brewed the pot to like make the podcast and stuff like that. I was invited later on to be like, oh, like we need somebody else, and I was just like, well, I'm not doing anything, so sure, sign me up. And it's been a lot of fun. We've been doing this for 6 years now. We were talking about this the other day, and I was just like, damn, has it really been 6 years? Have I really been doing, I think this might be the longest running project thing that I've been a participant of in my entire life.
Awesome. Kristen?
So my name is Kristen Parraz, and I am a retailer. I co-own Heidi Ho Comics in Santa Monica, California. My husband and I co-own it with 2 other couples. And other than those 2 other couples who are involved behind the scenes, my husband and I manage the store on a day-to-day basis. I was not a comic book reader. My husband was a collector and a fan. And when he got the opportunity to buy Heidi Ho, which he sold his entire Amazing Spider-Man collection, number 1 through 700, including Amazing Fantasy 15, to buy Heidi Ho Comics. And that was, in 2014. In 2022, most of those books have appreciated almost twofold. And so we all, he and I and everyone I tell that story to, regret it. And so I was in between jobs. My career path was social justice, and I was working with girls involved in the juvenile justice system as a mentor coordinator director. And I was burnt out, and I was taking some time off, and when he bought Heidi Ho, he was like, hey, you want to come help? And so I was like, sure, why not? Like, Jen, I'm not doing anything. And it was through that path that I started to realize that I didn't see very many faces that looked like mine in the comics. And people were coming in and asking for it. And because I didn't have the information and wasn't a comic book reader, there I was on Google, trying to find the information for them, and it was super hard to find. There were a handful, but there were a lot of missing holes. And so I was like, you know what? I want to kind of get that information out there. And so that's where the idea of Comadres y Comics came from. Is I wanted to highlight those characters so that people, like the people coming into the shop asking for it, who didn't know, just like me, could have that readily available to them. And the funny thing is when we first started, we were like, okay, here's the list of the 12 that we know exist. What the heck are we going to do after that? And so we were like, you know what, let's just start. And the amazing thing is that what happened was that we started going to conventions like this, and our world just exploded with Latino creators. And we just were like, oh my, and then people started emailing us and like, do my book and do my interview. And I mean, so much so that sometimes it's hard for us to keep up with it. And we just discovered so many Latinx creators that were out there doing it in the indie scene, doing it themselves, that we were like, this is what needs to be shared.
Fantastic. And I am pretending to be a comadre today. By the way, my sister bought a piece from Sophie today, one of our exhibitors, and what does it say on it? It says La Comadre. So it's meant to be. It's absolutely meant to be. So for folks who are new to Comadres y Comics, I want to just read the official description so they know that this is my favorite part. Created over a pitcher of beer.
Yep.
Comadres y Comics.
I remember.
We'll talk about the beer in a minute. Comadres y Comics is dedicated to highlighting Latinx creators and content with a focus on the presence of women in the industry as creators, characters, and fans. This is so important. And here's something I will tell you. As the director of the festival, I get to decide what the panels are. So here we are, and one of the things that I really dislike about comic conventions is that you'll have panels that are token panels. Mm-hmm. So it'll be like, you know, the Latina Power panel, or the here's one Latina per panel, or the no women on the panel, or the whatever. And so I really make a point of, and you'll notice, even if you just look at the schedule, that there are women in every panel. Some are all women, some are 50-50. I just want to make sure that I'm bringing together a good balance that is not just representative, but that really speaks to who is creating comics that may not be visible or as visible as some of the other folks who we see. So I wonder if you could speak of, and this is, I'll pose questions, but I just kind of want to see where this conversation goes, because I do want to get into Chisme. But I'm interested in you focusing on women in the industry as creators and consumers. I think that's really important, because we don't really talk about that. We talk about women in comics, either writing or illustrating, but as consumers. And I have a little story. So as a professor who was just getting into really teaching comics, maybe about 10 years ago, I would go to a comic shop and I'd go in and say, I'm looking for some really feminist texts that have some badass creators. I'd like at least one of the creators to be female. And I would get one of those. Like, what does that mean? Wow. What do you mean one of those? So that for me was actually very telling, because I knew where not to shop for my comics.
Yeah.
Because anywhere I had that experience, I knew, okay, I'm not going to send my students here. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, to kind of start us off, as women as consumers of comics. Mm-hmm. So thoughts on that?
So I'll start, just because it's something that is on the forefront of my mind all the time. As a retailer, I run my shop the way that I wanted to have been treated when I walked into a shop. And my experiences were very similar to Theresa's experiences, because I wasn't a consumer, but I had a partner who was. And so for birthdays and Christmases and all the holidays, I would go to shop and buy. And he had a wish list where he was trying to finish, actually, that Amazing Spider-Man collection he was trying to finish. And I walked into several stores in Los Angeles County where I was ignored, which was actually the better of the two, or patronized AF. Like, I walked out of a shop one time in tears because I was so angry. the way that I was treated. And I remembered that. And so when I started my shop, I said that I never wanted anybody to walk into my store and feel the way that I felt, that I was made to feel when I walked into other comic book stores. And so in order to combat that, when people walk into the store, especially women, I will approach them physically. I will come out from behind the counter and I will greet them. I will say, who I am, and I will tell them that I'm there to help them if they have any questions. And it is intimidating, regardless if people realize it or not. Comic book industry is still a male-dominated industry. Creators, retailers, and fans. Although women are the fastest growing group of comic consumers. And so that was an important statistic for me to learn, because why would we want to turn people away? Why would we want to turn people who are coming in wanting to consume because they are women? And so and unfortunately, some of those titles with female characters don't sell well. And like I said, we have partners and they'll want to take stuff off the wall. And I'll say, no, I don't care that it doesn't sell. The fact that that female character is on the wall and that everybody walking in can see that she exists is important.
Yeah, on that front, like, I work with Kristen at the comic book store, and we, like, especially Kristen above all else, she really wanted it to create a very welcoming atmosphere for everybody, and I think she 100% succeeded. But I started, I can remember the first time I went into a comic book store. I was 13, and I went in, and I immediately walked out because I was like, nope, not gonna do this. And I never stepped foot in a comic book store until I was 19. So for 6 years, like, I was just like, going to that comic book store, like, if they had treated me well, if they hadn't treated me like I was bothersome or dumb, I would have been shopping that entire 6 years as a child, going up into my late teens. And the fact that I didn't have the confidence enough to step into a comic book store until I was 19 was, like Kristen said, like, I didn't want to make, like, young girls or young teenage girls or, like, anybody like that feel like they were less than that. I mean, if we're gonna live in a capitalist society, at least treat me well enough that you'll take my money. Like, come on. But not only that, it's like, I started going to, like, conventions and stuff like that. Again, like, when I was, like, around middle school, high school, and I would, the first one that I first went to was Anime Expo. And I took my little sister with me, which was a bad idea. Mostly because I was just like, here's a 13-year-old and here's a 5-year-old. It's not a good combination. But I met some of my friends and some of, like, ardent fans who were women at those conventions, but, like, we always, like, kind of traveled, like, in groups, because being alone was, like, not it. And I realized, like other fans like me exist and stuff like that, and I wanted to create or help create a space that was okay for women to gather and to, like, talk about their stuff without, like, feeling like they were threatened or like they were looked down upon. So.
For myself, I remember driving back home from the swap meet and looking at this comic shop every time we drove by the swap meet on weekends, and the comic shop had like paintings on the window of, like, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and I always longed to go into that store, but my parents never took me there. And my brother, who is 7 years younger than me, he expressed interest into going into that store, and they took him and me along. And I just thought, why did we have to wait till he wanted to go? So I finally get inside, and yes, I did feel kind of like, what the heck are you doing here? And I felt like they approached my brother a lot more and more friendly to him, asking him what he was interested in, and encouraging him to do the drawing contest of comic book characters. And so I kind of lived vicariously through him. I mean, they would approach him and talk to him, and so then I would listen in, even though he was 7 years younger than me, I would listen in and I would participate in the drawings of the comic book characters. And it was through that I was able to like accept the fact that maybe they were thinking that I didn't really belong there. But I just kind of like, I was already very much older, and so like I just decided to just kind of put blinders and just go and look at for myself and just not worry about them. I went to their comic book signings and everything, and I was pretty much ignored. Like, I had to find everything out for myself, and in part I'm kind of glad I did, but in part I was very sad that they would approach my brother like very freely, very friendly, and for me I'm just kind of the background. Like, it almost felt like they felt that I was just there to take him there. But it wasn't so. Like, I wanted to be there. I wanted to know about comic books. I wanted to know about these characters, and I drew these characters at home, and it meant a lot to me. And I'd like to point out that we had a Wonder Woman Day celebration at Heidi Ho Comics, and we actually worked on the event, and there was this one lady there with her daughter, and she approached Jen and said, you know, what comic book do you recommend for my daughter? And all of a sudden, we all turned around, even people who were shopping in the shop, and they were giving freely information. You should read this one. What are you into? Look at this one. This was pretty good. So we all, like as a community, were trying to help this girl find a good comic book for her. And I just was like so happy that I was there to see that happen. I mean, I was like, you know, when I was this age, I read this comic book, and it was just like such a beautiful free space to like create a new comic book fan.
I really love that you use this what are you into question. I think it's such a significant launching point, and that's what drew me to the comic shop where I go here in Modesto, and I am going to shout them out because Sean over at Invincible Comics is just phenomenal. I wish he could have been with us here today, but when I walked into that shop about 6 years ago, knowing what I was going to be teaching in the fall, and I knew there were 2 comic shops here, so I went to that one first, and I did the thing where I walk in, say hello, very friendly, but I explained what I was looking for. I'm a professor of college, or I introduced myself as Dr. Rojas. I said it just like that.
You got the title, might as well flex it.
That's right, yeah. I said Dr. Rojas. But Sean immediately asked me, what are you into? So you're teaching comics, but like, what is the focus? He didn't say, oh yeah, with the feminist wall over here, or the women's wall, whatever it was. He started to ask me, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish in these classes? And that was so important to me, and I knew I had a friend there right away. And so in addition to that, he said, tell me what the texts are that you wind up choosing, and I will order them. So we'll have extra texts. And I explained one of my assignments that is a comparative assignment. He said, well, if you send your students in here, I'll ask them the same question. You know, what are you into? And I can help them choose 2 different texts to use to write for their assignments. And so that was 6 years ago, and he's been doing that ever since. And that was such a great experience, just as a whole, as a humane experience, as an experience for folks who. Many of my students have never worked with comics, and so it's intimidating for them, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, people think that if they can't draw, they shouldn't be reading comics. That's kind of weird.
Well, I want to just touch upon your point, and I want to just shout out to you for actually, when I hear that academics are using comics in their education, it makes my heart grow 3 sizes, because that's also a struggle for me with parents coming into the store or at a convention or somewhere where we're at, and a child is so enthralled and intrigued, and the words out of the parent's mouth are, that's not a real book. We're going to go buy. I've heard parents say, I'll buy you a real book later.
Because what they're saying is, I don't want you to read. Yes. I don't want you to read. I'm going to pick what you read.
Yeah. So the fact that still, I think, on a larger scale, comics struggle to find their place as a legit form of literature I definitely, as a retailer, work against that a lot, and I try to continue to educate people because myself, like I said, I wasn't a comic book reader until buying the shop. I love the comic strips. I'm a huge Calvin and Hobbes, Far Side, all that kind of stuff, Garfield, but actual comic books wasn't my thing. And my husband started recommending things for me, and I was shocked at how great of a medium and storytelling medium comics were, and how compelling some of those stories were, and just the topics that are dealt with. I mean, if you've never read historical books like Mouse or March or any of that, like TMI right now, but I was sitting on the toilet crying my balls out reading crying my eyeballs out reading Mouse.
No, crying your balls out.
Yeah, crying my balls out. and just like sobbing with mocos and everything because that
Those
book.
are the good sob, the moco sob.
Yep.
You keep reading.
And honestly, I'd be hard pressed to count how many times comic books have made me cry because of the storytelling. And so,
100%.
yeah. So thank you for sharing that with your students.
Well, and this makes it easy, not easy, I'm not going to say easy, for me to run a show, right?
Mm-hmm.
The work that's involved in putting a festival together, and I was just thinking about this as we were all speaking, is that this show is primarily run by women.
Hey.
Yeah.
It is 100%.
Yeah.
The director is a woman, my volunteer coordinator, my promotions team, my internal promotions team, which, by the way, they are social media madness. I see things posted, I'm like, that's amazing. Oh, wait, that's a show. It's so good. It's so good. So, and that's, I get, believe it or not, I get pushback about that. You know, it's like, oh, there's a lot of women. I'm like, what? So? Do I ever go and say, there's a lot of men? I'm like, no, you never hear that sort of thing. So I am so happy to see, for me, I have two goals in mind. The first goal is that the community, the students have a really good time, right? And in this particular show, we have this whole lowrider component that's just been blown me away completely. I'm so happy. Shout out to Nathan Sanchez for coordinating that. Holy cow, just amazing. And the flow that's coming between the two spaces. So there's the community, the student part, and then there's the exhibitor part. And I think that this is something that conventions don't pay attention to, and that is treating their exhibitors well. I want my exhibitors, I want them to sell out. That would be amazing. Then I get credit somehow. Right? I did that. But
not only that, you create this area where people want to come back.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I want folks to walk away from this event to say, I want to go back next year. I want to keep going back. Who says I want to go back to Modesto?
I was gonna say, like, you got me being like, damn, like, I can't wait to come to Modesto next year. Like, and like when I say that to like my friends, they're like, what's in Modesto? Like, you live in Los Angeles, you live in San Jose. Like, what's in Modesto? I'm just like,
when you know, you know.
You know, yeah.
I mean, to get excited to get in a car and drive 6 hours to an event, I mean, that speaks a lot about the event itself and how warm and amazing the space is and how you treat your exhibitors. I mean, just yesterday I was like, I feel like a queen. Like, I feel like I've had the royal treatment. Like, I cannot say more wonderful things about this. It's just really amazing.
Oh, but please do.
I mean, on our last episode, I said, look, if you want to get out because, you know, of COVID and all that stuff, you've been in for 2 years, and take that road trip, drive to Modesto, stop by, get, you know, sightseeing, but get to this event. It is so worth it. It's free. It's amazing. You have to come.
That's so lovely to hear, and it brings me to the kind of chisme size a little bit. And that is the scandalo that comes up when you're talking about, you know, different events and people, and it's people don't know all the behind the scenes. I'm not asking anyone name names or anything like that, but what I love about getting together this way is that I feel like we create a community where we can do that, where we can share that, where we can say, you know, I have this experience without naming names. Talk to me later. I was approached by this person, or because the thing about the comics as a larger body community, if we could call it that, I would still say community, has these pockets where people misbehave. There's a child in the room, so, oh wait, there's a child. Oh, child's not paying attention. You know, where, don't worry, I'll keep it in check. Parental discretion. But where somehow they feel the freedom to act out.
Yeah.
What is that about? What do you think?
I have a story that I actually just remembered because of like the conversation we had. I went to a convention in the city of Carson, California. It was a small convention, just sort of like this. And there were exhibitors and everything, people that put out their own comic. And I must have been maybe 14, definitely under 15. And I'm walking around and I'm trying to hear everybody about their comics and stuff. But there's one man knew his comic book was totally inappropriate for me. I was not sexually active. I was a freaking innocent child. And he shows me his comic with large penises and penetration and rape. And, it was, I didn't even know. I was in total shock. I didn't know what to do. My dad was walking around with my younger brother, so I was there standing there by myself. And thinking about it now, I want to kind of cry. In that moment, I was just so shocked I had no reaction. But that isn't acceptable.
It's abusive.
And the way he showed me his comic, and I just kind of stood there in shock, and then he proceeded to open his portfolio and show me oh, do you like The Simpsons? And then he showed me Marge being, yes. And I was just I kind of just walked back, and I could feel my blood draining and everything, and I just turned around and I kind of wanted to cry, but I was still in shock, and I just walked away, and I can't believe that he did that. What the heck was he thinking? And I didn't report it. I didn't even know I could do something like that, but yeah, if you're going to put out content like that, you have to be responsible for it. You can't just go showing every child that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm going to step back because I'm feeling a little emotional.
Thank you for sharing that, though. It's important, and this is the thing, and this is part of what I'm trying to facilitate is this kind of conversation, that we have that everything is wonderful and great, and we're empowering each other, but this is exactly the kind of thing that is still going on today.
Yeah, so comics, just like any other community, suffers from sexism and misogynism. I mean, there's no other way around that. The first time I started doing the pulls, which is where we pull books for customers every month who have subscriptions, and I saw the title Jungle Fantasy. And this is not the Black Panther Jungle Fantasy. This book was so, and I'm all for smut. I am not a prude. We found a book.
Can I quote that? I'm all for smut.
We have a couple of books that are for sale over there that is smut that we've reviewed on our podcast, but we didn't put them out because we didn't want the kids to look through them. But this was not that. This was using women in rape fantasy, using women as objectifying them in the most horrible way. And there were people that were our customers. This was early on, customers that we inherited. And I looked at my husband and I said, I refuse to carry this. I don't want to order this anymore, and I refuse. And he agreed. And those are the kinds of things that I think a lot of people in the mainstream don't really realize that still happens, and that as an industry and as a retailer, I still deal with. Do not effing get me started on the effing thigh gap.
No. The thigh gap.
Something as simple and as cover artists drawing women with the unrealistic thigh gap, with the way they're arching their back, all of that kind of stuff, it's all for the male gaze. And when women are the fastest growing group of consumers in the comic book industry, that is not for your consumer. That is for the male gaze. And that is something that as a retailer I still struggle with, because it is demeaning, it is objectifying, and I want women to not feel like they are being objectified just shopping in my store.
Mm-hmm. Like, going off of this, and going back a little bit to like the Chisme part of like conventions and stuff like that. There was a convention a couple years ago. I think it might have been WonderCon. I'm not afraid to drag WonderCon. They're fine. And there was because they serve alcohol. And there was a woman who was drunk. She was like drunk off her, but she was approaching other women and telling them to stay away from a certain exhibitor because she said he's a sexual predator. He's gonna like corner you and stuff like that. And then she approached me, and I was just like, and like nobody else was doing anything. They were just kind of like brushing her off. So I kind of just like stayed with her a little bit and let her like kind of say her piece and everything. And then I called like somebody over like to make sure that she was okay. But the fact that she was like doing that and that I was just like, how much validity is there in this? And then I felt bad for thinking that because I was just like, this is obviously something that she has experienced, and who am I to cast doubt on that? And then of course I did stay away from the exhibitor that they were talking about. But the fact that I didn't even know, and I was there as a press person, that I didn't know about that, like that is again that kind of community, because those big conventions like that, they don't foster a community, they don't foster that communication, and they just invite whoever. Whereas like here, and we're not going to name any names, but I was certainly relieved that there was some people here, and I also felt vindicated when someone else wasn't here, and I was just like, I knew there was a reason.
I honestly have experienced some of the same things that Jen has when it comes to cosplayers. Cosplayers in, where was I? Emerald City Comic Con. I was walking down the street with my husband, and this woman was in her cosplay. I don't even remember what it was, but very, very scantily clad woman walking down the street, and we were just following her. And a group of men were in between her and my husband and I, and they were being so harassing to her. She was alone, and I could tell she felt uncomfortable. I could tell that she didn't want to antagonize them, so she kind of was like the nervous laughter. And so I told my husband, Eddie, come on, let's go. And we went, and I started talking to her, and I started asking her questions, and she was lost, actually. And so we were trying to help her. But the fact that a group of 5+ men were creating that environment for a woman alone by herself, and to answer your question, who knows why they start acting like this, Theresa? Because it happens all the time.
Yes.
I see it every year in different capacities, different conventions. There are conventions that do serve alcohol. There's conventions where there's alcohol outside. Whether or not that is something that facilitates that. It's almost like it's another world outside of the reality that they feel like they can get away with whatever they want.
Yeah.
No, here's the reason that they feel like they can do it, because nobody's gonna be chismeando about them, and telling everybody above the sun. Seriously, if someone does something here, by the end of it, all of us are gonna know, and we're gonna be like, ooh, and that person's gonna be isolated. This is the one time where Chisme is serving the greater purpose here. It's just this is how you know information about somebody. This is how word travels, and it sounds funny, or it sounds kind of like maybe a little bit flighty, but that's true. How else do you know somebody, when you hear hearsay and stuff like that? How else do you know to avoid somebody, or to know that you want to get to know somebody? It's through Chisme, it's through talking.
Well, what's ironic is that when I don't know what his name was, but in the past there was a woman who finally stood up and said, hey, this dude groomed me, this dude did this to me, held this over me, threatened my job, and she came out, she made a statement. This was, I would say, like 5-6 years ago, I want to say maybe, and she did, and the horriblest thing, other than the actual abuse that she experienced, was everybody else coming out and saying, oh yeah, we knew that. Oh yeah. I've seen that. I knew he did that. I knew. And I was like, then why was he still involved?
Yeah.
Why did you allow it? Why did you keep letting him work in this industry where he could continue to do that over and over again?
Mm-hmm. And the fact that there's still like, there's some people who still like don't know or who genuinely didn't know, and now they've had interactions with this person. And like, again, this is in reference to another person who like a couple years ago, like he got like exposed and everything. And like he had interactions with like a lot of people. And then info came out about him, and then I was just like, all of a sudden everybody was just like, oh shit, we talked to him. Like, we didn't know any of this, but everybody else who kind of like was near him or like worked with it, they were like, oh, we kind of knew about it. And it was just so like, bruh.
Yeah.
A warning would have been nice, or kind of like a heads up, like, hey, like, you might not want to interact with this person. Like, come on. Like, it's like we, like, above all else, it's the way that some of these people act is because they generally think that they will face no consequences because they haven't faced any consequences.
Because they haven't been facing consequences, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important for me to point out that I was asked about maybe 5 or 6 people, and maybe 4 of those in particular I did not invite for these very reasons, and it wasn't all men. There were some women, yeah, that either I had heard things from multiple people, or I had bad experiences, or I knew that they treated some of my people badly.
Mm-hmm.
Like people, I have an advisory now, and there are about 10 of us, and they all do different things. They help me make this happen. And if you treat my advisory members badly, we're not playing, right? And I'm very open about that. But it wasn't just, oh, this person treated an advisory member badly. That was just one example. And then as I dug deeper, I like to say, hey, have you heard anything about so and so? And then it turns out there are all the stories. So rather than invite that person here and find out for myself, like, that's okay. I'm going to give someone else a spot, right? We're done. There's no reason to treat each other that way. And there's no reason to be, this is the other thing, to be a diva.
Yeah.
This is not any one person's show. Well, maybe one person. It's not about me at all. Right?
But it's a little bit about me.
And we just don't do that. And I have to say that it's the best decision. And it's a tough one because a lot of people ask me about, like, maybe 2 people. People kept asking me, is so-and-so coming, so-and-so coming? And I said no, and they wanted to know why. And I was like, none of your business.
Hey, do you want to grab a couple of shots after this? Like, no reason at all. Like, just... I'm not taking
as
the
an
information.
exhibitor, though, I want to say that I appreciate that kind of... Honestly, it is going above and beyond because you are trying to facilitate an environment of safety. And that is what I think, to be honest, a lot of fans and readers find in comics is safety. Whether it's that they have social anxiety, they have some sort of reading disability, or any other learning disability, and comics was their thing because it helped to facilitate their reading. My husband swears to this day that that's how he learned to read. I have teachers coming into the shop because for their problem readers, for their students on the spectrum, comics is the only thing that gets them to sit still for more than 5 seconds.
I'm laughing because my nephew was here today, and he's 5 going on 6, and he's trying to read. We've been working together. I'm tired of tutoring him though, because on the computer he's just like, and I grab him and make him sit there. So my sister's been telling, he's really into Minecraft. And so my sister's been saying, look, if you learn how to read really well, then you can read chapter books about Minecraft. And well, when he comes over, we read, but he loves the comics. He's attracted to he loves collectors. I've told you this, right? He picks collectors up and he cannot read what all is there, but he'll open collectors and he's like, and I'll ask him, I said, what's so funny? And he goes, it's funny. I'm like, yeah, but what's happening in the store? It's funny. He's literally like reading. It's obviously hilarious. Why aren't you laughing? So he came and I gave him some different, he was so overwhelmed. He was just like, oh, so many comics. And I said, you get to read all of these, and we're going to work on reading all of these. And he just sort of stood there, and he was like, wow. Wow, this is amazing. And I want to, oh my gosh, it's already, we only have 5 more minutes. We cannot have this without talking about beer.
Yes!
Beer.
Oh my gosh.
The importance of beer.
Yes.
In Comadres y Comics.
Yes.
What are you drinking? What's your favorite? What's going on?
Confession time. Well, not really confession time. If you listen to our podcast, you know that I didn't really like beer in the beginning. I was all about, I want tequila, whiskey, hard liquor, and like that's my drinking.
First of all, it was worse than that. When I first took her out when she turned 21, she would order cider.
I got cider last night. Don't judge me.
Like a sweet apple cider.
Yeah.
And
I had cider last night. Don't judge me.
I'm like, here, just try this.
I thought cider was beer. That was like that's what it was. Now I know that it's not, and now I can for sure say, like, if we were like, what kind of beer do you like? I was just like, I like stouts, like, for sure, because I like the coffee taste, I like the chocolate taste, or the fact my favorite ones are the ones that are barrel aged in whiskey barrels, because whiskey's where it's at, yo. But anyways, yeah, so I really learned to appreciate beer through these two. They have been great mentors, and I really am happy that I have been able to appreciate beer now instead of being like, ugh, Modelo, that's it.
Yeah, like we said at the beginning, we went to a brewery that was like right around the corner from where Kristen lives, and we had a pitcher of beer, and we just started working on what topics we want to talk about. And since we're drinking the beer, we're like, we should have a beer segment. And I was like, yes, that's perfect.
I was like, eh.
Yeah, I really saw it as another industry that is male dominated,
Yes.
that we all participated in, but we're still marginalized in as women. I go to breweries, and almost similarly to when I used to go to comic shops, they'd be like, what do you want, the blonde? What do you want, the lager? And don't get me wrong, I appreciate a good blonde or lager, but give me your double unfiltered IPA.
Yes.
I won't.
And so I just saw it as another way for us, honestly, to be badasses in a thing that people didn't think or believe or wanted us to be badasses in.
Yeah, actually, I would go to breweries like Monkish, all the stuff that was like local. And at the beginning, when I would go, there wasn't many like women brewers or women in the industry. And I would get this is a good beer for women. It's very fruity. And I'm like, no, I want the double IPA, please. Thank you. But I have seen and I have lived it where now there's a lot of women brewers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a society of women brewers. There are women-owned breweries out there now.
There's one here in Modesto, if you don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Modesto has amazing beer. We have some good brew pubs here.
1870, I think, is what the brewery is, right around the corner from the DoubleTree where we're staying. So we're definitely going to stop by there. But sorry to cut you off, Sarah, but I don't want to forget to tell you guys, if you're interested in beer, the society she's talking about is the Pink Boot Society. And they are a society of women brewers in the industry, and they do collaborations and they do special brews during the years to raise money to further women's education and get more women involved into brewing.
Like for those of you guys who don't know, like usually the brewers, they wear these like rubber boots. So
But they're standing in the vats.
So what this society calls it are pink. It's sort of like they're wearing pink rubber boots, and I think it's super cute. But like I was saying, like I have seen a great big shift in the way people approach me when they're asking me what I want to drink. So before, where they would say, "Oh, this is a nice girly like drink because it has a lot of fruit." Now they ask me, "What is it you like?
Yeah.
What is your go-to beer?" Instead of like pigeonholing me and saying, "Hey, you're a girl and you like fruity drinks." Now they are broadening their language and they're like, "What do you like? What are you into? What is your go-to beer?" And that's where we open up a conversation, and I don't get mansplained anymore. So I feel like there's been great shifts and strides within breweries themselves. Like they don't look down upon us, almost like in the comic book industry. So yeah, I really am so happy that conversation is changing.
And it's really in the best interest of the alcohol industry in
Of
general.
course.
It's like when some of you may remember when the pen for women came out. It might even still be out. Bic. The pen for women is pink or light purple. I was like, does this write differently? Does this activate my hormones? I don't understand. It's a pen.
Or like the butt wipes at the store. They have for him and they have for her, and they put the for her ones over by the period products and all that stuff, and they put the for him like by the deodorant or whatever. But it's the exact same thing that you can buy for $5 less over in the toilet paper section.
Yep.
By generic. Well, unfortunately, we are just like that. We are out of time. And it's been so lovely. And I want to say, Comadres, I could not be more happy that I have met you, that I've had a chance. Happier, excuse me, she teaches English, okay. I know it was wrong as soon as it came out. That we met and that you're here. This is going to be a regular feature of the festival.
Yay.
We end it this way. Tell us where we can find Comadres Comics online.
Well, you can definitely go to comadresycomics.com. We have a website.
And you can find us on most major social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, thanks to Sarah.
TikTok. And we also are on all major streaming platforms, and we have a YouTube channel where we actually do recordings where visually you can watch us interview creators.
Those are fun.
That
Those are
segment
so
is called
fun.
Las Pláticas. So you can follow us in all those places. And I just want to say, too, the fact that we're here means no one's talking crap about us. So,
Well, I didn't say that.
Oh, that's a
What
good
they-
chisme.
What are they saying? I want to confirm or deny.
Well, remember how you said you want to get some little drinks? They also have a table up front here, please. There's 2 tables. Stop by. They have just awesome stuff there. And I want to remind everyone what I say at the end of every panel, and that is create the stories that you want to see in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for inviting us. And thank you guys for coming.